Hi, this is Susan from Susan B. Cards. Tim Holtz just released some embossing folders, and I have two of them here. I have Typewriter and Foundry, and these are in the A5 size, which is 6 by 8.5. So these are a few embossing folders that he had previously in a smaller regular size. The size that was first released was 4 by 6.5, and I have that one here. And here's the new size, which is 6 by 8.5, so you could see the difference. So this one you'll be able to use for, many sizes. I made a slimline card with one of the folders that I have, and I'll show you that in a minute. Now here's the first one with Foundry, and I did this on silver metallic cardstock. So I first cut the paper to size, I cut out the sentiment, and then I embossed the whole thing. And then I took black acrylic paint and I rubbed it over the top of this paper. I just let it dry for just a few seconds, wiped it off, and then it kind of highlighted some of the lines and then these rivets here, just to make it stand out a little bit. And then I used the text die to cut this out, and I actually cut it out several times. I placed the pieces back into the negative space. And then I used some of the pieces from a couple of the vault dies, and I'll link that all in my description and on my blog at susanbcards.blogspot.com if you want to learn more and see what I used. And on this one, I colored the paper and then let that whole thing dry. And then I went over the letters with some embossing ink. And then I used some kind of textured, I think it's called tinsel, gold tinsel embossing powder over this, and heat embossed it so that it would stand out. And it kind of gave, a little bit of a grungy look, and cutting it out made a little message of my own. I'll show you how I made this grungy background for this typewriter embossing folder next. And I cut a piece of paper to fit my embossing folder. I think this one I cut to, it's 8.5. Yeah, it's 8.5 by 6 inches. And that should fit nicely in my embossing folder. So I'm going to just mist my paper just a little bit, and I have some colors here. I'll just say them as I use them because I'm not sure I'm going to use all of them. So this one is just a regular spray stain, and it's antique linen, and I think this is just a nice beige color. I have rusty hinge. This is one of my favorite colors. I just like that. Use a little bit of a blue color. This one is salvage patina. I don't want to put too much of that, make a big mess. Now I have old paper here. This one is an oxide, and this one is speckled egg. I like using a little bit of the oxide, but not too much, because it'll give a nice creamy look to the whole thing. Now this is starting to mix together, so I think I'm gonna just wet this a little bit and then use a little heat and dry it up. So I'll be right back. So it dried a little bit, not all the way, and I'm gonna put on some peeled paint. I want to put a little bit of blue in it, so I have faded jeans. And this is distress oxide also. Now to top this off, I want to put a little bit of the brown in. And this one is walnut stain. Move some of this around near the edges. Okay, I'm going to dry this a little bit and I'll be back. All right, this is still a little bit wet, but you can see how it's coming together. I probably want a little bit more color in there, so I'm going to put more of the rusty hinge. And I won't put any more of the oxide. I think there's enough of the oxide there. So I'll probably just use a couple of the blues and the greens. Okay, this is pretty much what I wanted. Or this will lighten up once it's dry. Just maybe a little bit of water here. Try to get that corner. I want to just be sure there's color everywhere. And then some of these areas here where the ink is pulling up, I'll just take a paper towel and kind of dab it a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to dry that and I'll be back. Here's the dried panel. And I'm going to put it into the embossing folder and run this through, and I'll be back. Here's the paper after I ran it through the embossing folder in the Big Shot. And it's kind of difficult to see the letters. They don't really stand out. Now, I did the same process for this card as well. I just used different colors for the background. And I found that you really couldn't see the letters very well, but that was okay for this card because I wanted it to be more subtle. And I like the way this one looks. But for this card, since I'm using the letters to spell something out, I do want them to stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to take this archival ink pad and rub it over the letters just to make them stand out a little bit more. Now I'm just going on a straight line because I don't want to hit all the high points. There are some, bumps in some areas that kind of stand up, and I really don't want to do that. I'm just trying to hit these letters so that I can cut them out because I'm going to emboss it right now. This one is gold tinsel, and it's an old one that I've had. So you can see the embossing powder is sticking to the archival ink because that ink stays wet a little bit longer. So you can already see that it's standing out much more than it did. And then I'm just going to use a brush and try to get some of this extra embossing powder off. And then I'm going to heat it up. And I'll be back to show you what it looks like. I heated my panel, and here it is. Now I'm going to cut out the pieces, the letters that I need. So there's lines you can see between the letters, and that's where I'm going to cut. They're not straight lines, but there's definitely, a division. I'm just going to curve these off just a little bit. They don't have to be perfect. I mean, this is definitely going to be a little wonky looking, and it just lends itself to the mixed media background, I think. But I'm just going to cut a few curves there. So I have the L. I'm going to go ahead and cut out the other letters. I have my letters cut out. On a few of them, I noticed that you can see a little bit that color of the paper underneath the cream. So I'm just going to use this small ink pad and just cover the edges like this on all of them. I think it looks better. I do this on a lot of inked panels, even if I use the entire panel, because sometimes you can see the edge, and I don't think that looks really good. So it just takes a minute to do this. Try to just grunge up this, the edges and the different raised parts by just running this ink panel over, this ink pad over, and you can see highlighting the extra raised areas. Now I didn't want to do that first because I only wanted the embossing powder to stick to the letters, and if I had done the entire panel, then you would have gold embossing powder stuck everywhere, and I didn't want that. And this doesn't take long. You could quickly go over this. Try not to go over the embossed gold, because you'll end up getting a little bit of gold on your, you know, you might have a few flakes of gold stuck onto your pad. That's it. I had cut my 8.5 by 11 piece of paper to 8.5 by 6, which left this piece of paper this size, and it happens to fit the file folder that I'm going to cut. So you just need one piece of mixed media paper to cut both for the embossing folder and this folder. Now this is from the original set, which is called Specimen, and it comes with all these slides and pieces of paper. Now there's a new one that is from the vault, and that one is called Noteworthy, and it just includes this folder, but it's much smaller. As you can see, this was the original, and this is the vault. So I'm using the larger one. This one fits the front of this 5 by 7.5 inch card. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this. I'm also going to cut the saying. Here I used Archive, and I think I'm going to use a different one. There's also Specimen, Collect, Filed, Archive, Recorded, and Series, and I'm going to use Collect. So let me cut this and I'll be right back. Here's my file folder. I cut it first and then folded it so I was sure that everything was placed in the right place. And I took the word Collect, and using a piece of mint tape to hold it in place, I ran it through the die cutting machine. And now you have that. And just use this tool to press it out. And now I'm just going to spray some distress inks onto this just to color it, like I did here. It's going to be the same process I did before, so I'm not going to bother showing. I'm just going to quickly go ahead and do that. Here's my folder. I'll show you the colors I used to spray. A little bit of spun sugar. Both of these are distress oxides. Festive berries. A little bit of picked raspberry and kitsch flamingo. And these two are just regular distress spray stains, not oxides. For the ticket, I use the nested dies from Scrapbookcom. There's nested stitch tickets, and I use a larger size, and I cut it from the same distress Heavystock paper. For the other card that I made, I just used the size smaller and just cut this from some blue scraps cardstock that I had. So I'm just going to quickly just ink the edges just to make it look a little bit weathered. And this is Gathered Twigs. And then I have just a number stamp. This is from a Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous set, and this one's called Field Notes, and it's a good one because it has lots of numbers, some postal marks, just small fill-in type items. So I'm just going to use some black ink for this. I'll just use Archival. There you go. And then I'm going to attach the letters. I'm going to get a little bit of foam tape just to raise it up just a little bit. I have the Scrapbookcom premium foam adhesive, and this is nice because it's black. It comes in a few different size rolls. I started from the right just so that I could get the proper spacing from the number and not block that. And then I'm putting this last letter here. I want it just to stick up a little bit more than the other ones. I'm going to trim that a little bit. Next I have a piece of twine, and I'm just going to go ahead and attach that. So I have this piece of black cardstock, and it is cut 5 inches across, and it's going to be 7 inches down, but I cut it about a 1/4 inch longer. And I put this edger die on here, and this is from the Vault Edges die set. Now you can see it doesn't reach the bottom, so I'm going to have to move this down. So I just use some mint tape to hold it in place. I'm going to have a little bit of a torn edge. Now I'm just going to move it down just a little bit. And then use the same tape to hold it in place. So I cut it, and didn't quite meet all the way, so I'm just going to trim this a little bit just so that it comes off. And I'm going to trim this here too. So there you go. Now I have this pretty torn edge, and I'm going to trim this just off to make this 5 by 7. Okay, it's all trimmed. Now the reason I made it just a little bit longer was that way I would have the option in case one of the edges didn't look as good, but it didn't really matter, so I just trimmed a 1/4 inch off the bottom. You can see that I decided to put this on this side this time, making it a little bit different. And now I'm going to attach everything. I have the piece that goes over here, which I'm going to put at an angle. This is going to be slightly smaller. This is slightly smaller than 5 by 7 because I cut this paper 5 inches across, and I did cut off part of the edge. But that's the way that I wanted it to look, so that when I put it against a piece of cream paper, you can see that the edge is cut. I cut this piece, and this is a little bit different than this one. This one came from a different set. So this one is from Vault Picture Show. I decided to use this one because it's from the same set as this file folder, and I just thought that would be easier. And I'm just going to put that in this corner this time, and put the ticket like this. And then I cut the butterflies from the Hippity Hop set. So it's just a small butterfly, but you can use any butterfly. I just thought that one was kind of cute. So again, I'm going to put this like this, put some butterflies along the top. Now for this, I'm not going to put the same photo in because I don't want exactly the same thing. Because I'll probably send this to somebody rather than using it as a scrapbook page, which is what I did here. And I used a picture that I had. So I'm going to put maybe some flowers here. So I'm going to cut that out, and I'll be right back when I have everything together. I attached everything to the card, except for these last 2 pieces. I just want to be sure it's placed the way that I want it to. I put a small flower. It's from the Floristy set, and it comes with an embossing folder and these flowers, and it just fit right into that slide. So I'm going to leave that there. I put some black fun foam on the back of this just so that it would pop up. I like to do it on either side of the string so that it lays down flat. Is that about here? I haven't attached this yet. I'm going to go ahead and attach this as well. I just put glue right where this center part of the butterfly is so that the wings would kind of sit up. It's metallic cardstock. It was just scraps of some that I had. And that way I could bend it just a little bit to give it a little bit more dimension. I made that one and this one just depending on if you want to do a scrapbook page or a card. And it doesn't have to be love. It could be, you know, another word. And then with this one, I did use the set, the Vault Bunny and Chick, and just use the bunny. This is a book die from an old Halloween set that isn't available anymore. And then these are, I'm trying to remember what those were. This is from a set called Wildflowers. But again, that'll be listed in the description. I like long stems like this because I think it's a nice extra to add on to a card. You know, just gives a little bit of height. You don't just want this bunny to be kind of floating. I like this little sticker. It just says, go wherever anyone wishes. And he's kind of reading a book. And you can see all the letters around him. And then again, this edge that looks like a piece of notebook paper pulled out. But those are my cards. Using this new embossing folder release. And that is it for today. So thank you for watching my video. And if you need anything, everything will be linked in the description and on my blog at susanbcards.blogspot.com. Thanks for watching.